welcome, and I suppose particularly welcome to Grangegorman. So Lloyd asked we just give a brief overview, kind of bit of context of this as an example of the many aspects of sustainability that come to bear on a project like this. So basically arises from DIT is currently spread all over the city, a whole series of locations, and it's been a long-held desire to move to one single location. And a lot of work was, that's not uncommon, there's around the world, lots of, particularly like us, Victorian-based institutions, lots of small institutions, lots of them have done moves like this, particularly a lot of, both around Europe you find examples. Typically either the options are stay put or generally move out of town. We were just remarkably lucky that there was a site of this scale. It's a over 30 hectare site that's still within the city, if you like, within the core of what the north and south circular roads or the canals that identify the city centre. It was a former mental hospital that was earmarked for development but had never actually happened. So through a lot of jiggery-pokery and politics, the decision was made that this would become a new home for DIT, but also that the existing health activities would be retained on site in a new format, and also that there should be, as a regeneration project, that there should be very positive and outcomes for the local community as well, that it wasn't just some enormous elephant that would parachute in on the local community. So that's a view of the site. Not too long ago, in the late 50s, a lot of protected structures on the site, buildings dating back to the oldest, the 1780s, quite a few buildings from the 1800s, this suite of buildings from the 1850s. Quite a lot of them, a good fraction, got demolished / fell down in the 1980s, but there's still a significant tranche of about 10,000 square metres of older protected structures on the site. In order to manage the development coherently, a statutory agency was created. Not uncommon to have a kind of regeneration agency. They're there to work on behalf of DIT and HSE, but also they have a very particular remit to ensure that the local community benefits from this as well, that the two big players don't just run roughshod over and do stuff that we want. And the ultimate success of this is the economic and social regeneration of the area, as well as the delivery of the particular components. So it's a real mix of uses. The dark green is kind of our core teaching and learning facilities, but there's all the stuff that associates with that in terms of sports, recreation, performance, pitches and open playing space. But there's also particular health facilities still to be retained and built on site, new ones for the local community, local school, but also local amenity space, and I'll show how some of this has been delivered. So we also have a very special site with this long history, some of it very dark in terms of the way people were treated in mental institutions. The building opposite here was originally built as a prison, long history of transportation to the new world, so very, very mixed history to the place, which we need to also bring along with us. A master plan for the site was done with a huge amount of engagement of all the stakeholders, and that involved a lot of community workshops as well. With our master planners in a big competition, a team from the US, Rubel Goodell, were the winners on that. And their master plan is very much about opening up the site. As a mental hospital, it basically was a prison, big high walls, enclosed, but with some lovely features, some lovely open spaces. So their master plan is a combination of opening it up while retaining that lovely, those really good parts of the site, the protected structures and the open space. And the metaphor of the hand sort of comes from the palm of the hand is the green spaces that you see below here, the pitches and the trees. Then a series of big plots for development, and the fingers are kind of roots through between the plots to ensure the site's highly permeable, and you don't differentiate between health bits or education bits or community use bits. And that has meant literally breaking down walls. Those are a couple of images from around the site of the befores and afters, where the main entrance that most of you to come in, that was just until 2014, was just a big high wall there. There was one entrance to the site, the older wrought iron gates, which are a particular feature of the site, but that was the only way in. There's literally an underpass under the road that links the two sides of the site that are either side of the road. So there's been a series of opening ups that now allow the local community in. They walk through the site, they might be just going through to walk the dog, catch the Lewis, which have been hugely beneficial to literally breaking down the walls. A big project like this, there's a lot behind it. We basically did the master plan for the site, which is a long-term view for how the site will be used by all the stakeholders and allows room for expansion. Here in Ireland we have a demographic growth of students coming through we need to plan for. A how-to plan was delivered, a strategic plan, and then the whole thing was brought through the planning process through something called strategic development zone planning, which is kind of a holistic view of planning that looks at transport, water, waste, energy, in terms of, rather than just going building by building, how will a site with 25 to 30,000 users function, and making sure that it's done in a coherent and holistic way. In terms of the sustainable development of the site, it was been very important for us. It's core to what we do. It's an element, a significant element of many of our programs, and the President would have touched upon much of this earlier, as well as Magella just pointing out our statutory obligations. And I'd like to say we are on a glide path to achieving our 2020 targets, so we're not the ones missing the national targets. There's also social obligations, and that's a much broader one here in terms of our impact on this part of the city and the regeneration element to it. And there's simple economics. Well, again, Magella talked a lot about heat, but actually our electricity bill is more than twice our heat bill. So that's, if we can do things to address that, they're good for the bottom line as well. So we have a broad sustainability strategy for the whole site, which addresses, in the first instance, as we expect, carbon, but also water, biodiversity, waste, transport, and through to governance, community, and education. So it's trying again to take a holistic view of this, not purely just worrying about the terawatts of power. And that's transferred through that sort of in terms of the basic decisions with the site. The site layout has been designed, the building placements, to basically facilitate naturally lit, naturally ventilated buildings. So it takes into account the prevailing winds and orientations, and the aim is to try and build buildings generally orientated to for natural, narrow plan, naturally lit, naturally ventilated. And the fingers that I mentioned are a response to the prevailing winds here are southwesterly. If you want natural ventilation, you need some air movement. So that's basically that. At the most fundamental level has driven the master plan, and that was tweaked a bit in terms of looking at directions, wind directions and so on. So I guess at the most basic level we've tried to take it into the actual master plan. More so when you do an audit of a third level institution, the heating and the energy of the buildings is a small part compared to the energy consumed in moving everyone in and out and us all going to conferences and that element of it, but mostly the day-to-day part. DIT, historically, because of our location, city centre locations, we have a very good modal split, driven mostly by the fact that we've almost no parking. So that encourages people to get here by other means. A key part of this move here was to keep that excellent modal split and improve it if we can. And that meant working with government. Key decision that was made, and we lobbied, and the transport providers lobbied for the extension of the tram network to this part of the city. And that started operating last Christmas, which was a key part in delivering connectivity to the site, allowing for the fact that thousands of people can come and go easily. And that's, I think, we often berate government, but what we're seeing here is some kind of joined up thinking. You've got the regeneration plan here to a part of the city that's quite deprived. A big investment by the state that brings in other investment, but also investing in the transport up front. The tram is important, the bus network is even more important, and again we're working very closely with the bus network for Dublin is being redesigned as we speak under a thing called Bus Connects there. So the site is well connected, and under the new network it looks like it'll be even better connected. We'll basically have two of the radial and the main circumference route will go down three sides of the campus in terms of bus. So again, but then working your way with the bus net, the Dublin Bikes is a bike share scheme that's been extended recently to this part of the city, and again has been hugely successful here in Dublin in changing attitudes as much as the actual numbers of people taking it. From a very low of less than 5%, we're back up to over 10% of people at the peak now using bikes to get in and out of the city. And again, the Dublin Bikes have been both important in capacity, but also for people trying them and using them, and you'll see a pile of them there just by the gate. But also looking at things like just walking and working with the city to improve the street infrastructure to make it more pleasant and safe to work. So there's a couple of big new student accommodation blocks being built privately just adjacent to the site, and that's a very good example of kind of knock-on profits and benefit to the area. But part of their planning condition is they have to renew the street there to make it safer, better lit, easier to walk on. So that's kind of all part of, again, Magella touched on the transport, the real parts of public transport, walking and cycling are the ones you really want people doing. We have, of course, a very thoroughgoing energy strategy for the site, which is about minimising energy demand, building fabric, and minimising consumption in terms of going to sustainable lighting. I guess that's something we've been doing pretty thoroughly through the Institute anyway. Our Estates Office have been working with the support of SEI over the last decade on retrofits, LED replacements, bulb replacements and boiler replacements, those sort of good, sensible things that yield benefit. But what we've looked here more generally is on the site, on having a new site, to look at the site-wide infrastructure. We have looked at sustainable water. We have had to implement SUDs, sustainable urban drainage, such that after we've built the whole site out, that the runoff will be no more than it was to start with. So under the big pitch below here, the all-weather pitch is a huge attenuation feature that in the event of heavy storms will hold water for 3 days or so and let it run out slowly so as not to flood the local sewage network. But when we were putting in the infrastructure, we took the opportunity to also put in a district heating network. While common across much of Europe, and particularly Northern and Eastern Europe, they're very unusual here in Ireland, very little used. A couple of the university campuses is the odd one. But it's a very clear, recognised as a way now of trying to, and it's an objective city development plan to do these. So we took the opportunity while we were digging the whole place up, at that point relatively little extra cost, to put the network in the ground. We are now attempting to find the wherewithal to put the power plant to drive the network. And that's proving challenging because you're trying to get bits of money from individual projects that would normally be a few percent of each building in terms of its local boilers. Trying to get all that money together in one place up front is challenging. And again, Magella mentioned the National Development Plan. There's a specific fund, competitive funds out at the moment, so we're literally come from this morning working on at a meeting where we're preparing a submission to that to try and help fund the actual energy centre. And there are challenges in what you put in it in our analysis. Right now, the burning gas is by far the cheapest thing for us to do. If we look at putting in biofuel, we're looking at paying a considerable additional amount of money for that over gas. So from a sustainability point of view, single efficient boilers, one or two big efficient boilers, would be a huge win over multiple. This building is heated from a small old boiler around the back here, so there's a big win there. But in terms of fuel mix, we see certainly combined heat and power will be the first real win we can get when we have enough demand for the heat. And as I said, that's really about addressing our electricity demand rather than our heat. So it is the aim to do this as long term is when eventually we really price the price of carbon into the cost of fuels, that we will be in a position to easily swap over to other technologies. If you have a central plant, if you've 48 boilers and 48 buildings, you're never going to be able to do that. So that's the real driver for the district heating, is to give us that long-term flexibility. So we have done a series of programs just to summarise where we're at. The first phase was about bringing existing buildings, these protected structures, back into use. This is one of them. They've all come with their individual challenges. This is Still a consecrated church. It's been done in conjunction with the Archdiocese here in Dublin. So it's still used for religious services by all the Catholic denominations, but with their agreement it's also an event centre, a conference centre, and used for teaching. So it's an unusual, but I think a very good model of how maybe these sort of buildings might go in the future. A lot of them tend to get converted and turned into houses or offices, but the best use of a protected structure is to continue to use it as it was. We've done extensive renovation in other buildings. You'll see, I think, over when we're here. And it's just some examples of the planning scheme. An important part of the planning scheme has to be to deliver what we said we deliver. So on the right was the visual from the planning scheme, and on the left was kind of the delivery. So an important part of a big project like this is carrying through on what you say you do. Our first new build, the Greenway Hub, houses all our environmental sustainability research, and we'll hear about much of that over the next day or two. Also our hothouse business incubation. As a new build, then, we've tried to take the basic principles out there. So it's largely orientated with it's narrow face to the south, longer faces east-west. It's generally aimed to be naturally lit, narrow plan. We've mixed mode ventilation. It is a research building, so in research labs, so it's got some parts of our intensive energy use. But where we've got that, we've tried to, so for example, fume hoods result in a lot of air changes, but then we've put in a lot of money on heat recovery on the air to try and counterbalance that. So it's meant, it ends up being quite a complex building in terms of controls to try and manage that, and that was really challenging, not to be underestimated. The technology's all there, it may all be bespoke, but getting systems from 4 or 5 different suppliers to work together is still really challenging. Again, I think you'll see a bit of the nice example of our site-wide estates buggies. They're electric buggies, are a part of an experiment in local charging, will be discussed. But it's also, the project has delivered health facilities, an initial replacement mental health building for the activities that were here, and a new primary care building just opened late last year, which again refurbished an old building, the laundry, and some new build. Our key secret weapon in working with the local community has been the playground. That's just been such an enormous success. It's not something you normally, well, you might say a third level education is just a giant playground, but it's not something, and our estates guys were horrified when they thought they had to look after a playground. But it's been such a big win in terms of local community engagement, of people coming in with their kids, viewing this as part of their community and not just somewhere in behind the high walls. And we actually have a part that makes a primary school, and having that here again has been great for community engagement, so that we've been in a temporary school for a few years, new one just about to open in discussion. So the development, the delivery of this community spaces, local clubs playing here, that's the local St. Brendan's soccer team, have been hugely beneficial in a project like this of building community engagement, which is a key part of the community seeing real gain from this. And that's involved labour clauses where local people are, individual contractors have to try and employ up to 20% of their new hires from the local area, and we've been achieving that. We have new buildings in construction, so you'll see some really big sites around, which is about moving a lot of our students here in 2020, about 10,000 students moving here into 2 big new buildings. Our central quad off to the right here, where you can see the 4 big cranes, and across the road our east quad, with all of our music, performance, drama, arts type activities all brought together. So we're really looking forward to having those opening in summer 2020 when you come back. We'll be having the conference there, and much more in the pipeline after that. A quick word.